Hello everyone. So a little bit about me to start off with. So I'm actually head of digital marketing courses for Avado, and I've produced lots of digital marketing courses myself. I got started in that in the year 2007, so quite a bit ago. I do have a bit of an SEO background as well. I've been head of SEO in different places. I've been a senior search manager for a large agency in London, but I'm quite passionate about podcasting, to be honest with you. I also host the show Search Marketing Scoop for SEMrush. It's a relatively new show. And I've hosted digital marketing radio for a few years now. That's doing pretty well online as well. But why is this talk relevant for SEO? So I thought I'd just talk a little bit about that first of all, because obviously this is Search London and SEO Meetup. So in terms of search engines, I was thinking this would be a good way to frame it, because everyone thinks of Google as being the big search engine. Maybe they might think of Baidu, or it depends on, I guess, which countries you're actually targeting for your particular countries. But massive search engines, of course, are YouTube. And YouTube, a lot of people are aware that it's about the second biggest search engine around the world. But Amazon, do you actually think of Amazon as a search engine? And how about iTunes as well? They really are two massive search engines. And here's some success I've had in these various platforms. Amazon, so 50,000 results. So I'm ranking number 3 for the phrase digital marketing on Amazon. And that's done really well. I mean, this book sold over 1,000 copies. It's got some decent reviews there, but it's a great brand builder as well. It really does enhance authority. YouTube as well. This video has been ranking on the top page for the phrase digital marketing for 5 years. It was ranking number 1 for digital marketing for about 2 years. It's had about 160,000 views. And you can drive a lot of traffic and authority from that as well. Just make sure you have the link at the top of your description to get the direct traffic, of course, as well. But iTunes is probably more relevant to what we're discussing today. And if you search iTunes for digital marketing, up there somewhere is digital marketing radio. And of course you can drive a lot of traffic from these search engines. But I just wanted to emphasize how much traffic and listenership that you can get as a result of these rankings. So here are my stats for digital marketing radio. And these are stats for January. So I've just selected one of the most recent months, and 20,000 downloads for the month of January. And what may surprise you is the last episode that I published was about 6 months ago. Once you start publishing lots and lots of episodes of a podcast, then that existing ranking, that existing authority that you have will keep on bringing you traffic. So it's shown no sign of decreasing. In fact, it's only increasing slightly over time. The number of subscribers increasing as well. One other thing that I wanted to mention in relation to tying podcasting together with SEO is we're talking a bit tonight about being a guest on podcasts. And one of the benefits about being a guest is the podcaster that hosts you tends to feature a bio about you on the actual podcast episode page. So that's me interviewing Larry Kim, linking to WordStream, linking to his new site Mobile Monkey as well. So that's some nice links for him. Can you imagine if you were a guest on 50 different podcasts and you had 50 different podcasters with their websites all linking to you, having unique links? That's a lovely, great thing to have from an SEO perspective. So being a guest on a podcast, you can feature yourself in other people's search engines. You can build your own personal authority, build your brand authority, drive more traffic to your site, and increase your SEO ranking because of all the links that you get in these different blog posts. So it's a very much an SEO related activity as well. So 6 steps to be a great podcast guest tonight. I'm going to cover prep, equipment, setting the scene, testing beforehand, your technique, and a bit of promotion towards the end. So let's start off with prep. First of all, if you are fortunate enough to be invited to be a podcast guest in someone's show, please listen to the show beforehand. You would not believe the number of people that I've had on as guests that I know that haven't listened to the show. Because I've got on Digital Marketing Radio, I've got a few general questions that I have just for that specific show, but a few questions that I happen to repeat just to get different people's opinions for the same question. I've got something called the this and that round, which is 10 quickfire questions on whether they prefer Facebook or Twitter and this or that. And quite often at the end of that sequence, the guest says to me, "That was great. That was a great series of questions." Yeah, I know, but yeah. Have you not listened to it before? It's a bit frustrating, and of course, it really helps you get a feel for the podcaster, the interviewer. What kind of questions are likely. You'll be a better guest by doing that. Ask the host if there is a topic that you would like to be discussed, or they would like to be discussed on the show itself. So the show is all the much better if you can deliver content that hasn't existed before on the show. And perhaps the host has interviewed 200 different people. You're not going to listen to 200 episodes, but if you can clarify what content hasn't been covered before in the show and be rather unique in your approach, then that's going to offer additional value for the listeners themselves. Send the host suggested questions. So once you've established the topic, then send them questions. These are the kind of questions that you could ask me. You're not leading the whole conversation. The host can go to a different angle if they're a decent host and do follow-up questions, but it will help to ensure that you come across as authoritative within your chosen topic area. Write and prepare an intro and an outro. Now this is for you. So you need to know how to introduce yourself succinctly, slowly, and within 30 seconds or so. Just a little bit about yourself, your company, this is what I've done, and you can find out a little bit more about me here. Some kind of outro similar to that as well. You'd be surprised how many people actually just aren't that succinct because they haven't thought of what they're going to say beforehand as well. Prepare a soundbite takeaway tip. So quite often I'll interview people, and at the end I'll ask them, now do you have one final actionable tip you'd like to share with the audience? Well, we've covered everything already, or going back to this. If you have one idea that you can take from something else that you've done before, one actionable tip that's a little bit different, it really makes you sound that extra little bit authoritative, and it gives you that lovely ending to the podcast episode. Okay, so that's the prep beforehand. Going into the equipment, first of all, don't use an integrated laptop microphone. They are generally terrible on audio quality. Don't use a flimsy headset. I'm including iPhone headphones in that. I've interviewed a few people with beards and quite a few interesting noises through the microphone there. And number 3, condenser microphones. Bigger beards than that. Condenser microphones sound quite good when you try them to begin with, but condenser microphones generally sit maybe about 2 feet away from you, and they pick up quite a few things around the room, things like computer fan noises or sneezes or whatever happens to be going around next to you. If you've got if you've got a washing machine next door, a tiny bit of humming noise, it'll pick up that. So condenser microphones aren't that great. So what kind of equipment should you have? You should have what's called a dynamic microphone. Dynamic microphones are great because they've got a very small sweet spot for audio. So about 4 inches away from the microphone is the sweet spot that you should be speaking at. I highly recommend in the UK a microphone called Samson Q2U, only about £60 or so. And the nice thing about it is it has both a USB and what's called an XLR connection. An XLR connection is more a professional connection, but when you get started, you can just use the USB connection, and that'll give you a very nice quality audio with no background noise, as long as if you hold the microphone correctly. And one of the ways that you can ensure that you've got a better quality of noise, and no technical word here, plosives. Plosives are what happens when you say lots of P's and B's and it sounds like someone spitting into your ears if they don't use a windscreen of some sort on the microphone. So you can get a windshield for about £1, not a problem at all. Also, if you're using a dynamic microphone, which you should, use one of these, a suspension boom arm stand, about £10 or so. Just clip it onto the desk, no problem at all. Obviously use headphones. I say obviously, a lot of guests don't have headphones, or even if I tell them beforehand, have headphones. I don't have headphones. Headphones are so important because one of the things that I like to do is to try and record the guest locally as well. There's a couple of different ways of doing that, but essentially if I record them locally, I'm going to get all the sounds that appear at their end. And if they're listening to me through their speakers, I'm going to get a recording on their track of me and them at the same time. Also, if I'm coming through their speakers, then it's going to make more of a cutout between when they start or when I start talking. So it's not a good experience. It's not good for audio editing as well. So that's a long way of saying just wear headphones. And then finally, in relation to equipment, Ethernet. Use a fixed connection. Wi-Fi is good, but it's never as good as fixed connections. So always use a computer with a fixed connection. It can be a laptop if you want, but please have a decent internet connection. I always like saying, ideally it should be an upload speed from their computer of 1 megabit per second minimum. Ideally more than that, and a higher download speed as well. But sometimes the upload speed can be the issue, especially if you're recording video from their end. Setting the scene. So if you're having your podcast recorded on video as well as audio, then you need to make sure that the video actually looks okay. There's someone that I interviewed that shall remain nameless that had a set of washing in their background. They didn't actually notice that beforehand, and I didn't notice that either just before they went on air. But if you just think carefully about what your background looks like, that's very important. And that also includes things like the positioning of the webcam, and even something as simple as the amount of space on top of your head. If you have a look at what a presenter looks like on the BBC, on Sky, whatever channel, then that kind of position of the presenter is where you want to be. If there's a lot of space above someone's head, apparently psychologically it actually reduces their perceived authority. So you want to try and make sure that the minimum amount of space above the head, and you're set quite nicely with lighting as well. And I say lighting, I've got a couple of these lights. They're only about £20 each, nice LED lights, but they just add that nice glow and make sure that there's no shadows around you. And if you're going to do that, a couple of these cables as well, because they're battery powered. And there's finally, the webcam I use is called a Logitech C920. It's about £70, but it's an HD webcam that has autofocus, and it really will make the difference if you're doing that live interview on video. Testing beforehand. So if you're using Skype, then obviously test your connections on Skype, but even if you're not going to talk to someone via Skype, if you're going to use Google Hangouts or something else, then still test your settings on Skype, test your video, ensure that your audio is okay. You can do the test call on Skype to make sure they're getting your audio okay. So it's a really good way to test. And if you're really keen on ensuring that you're providing the optimum level of audio for the podcaster that you're appearing on, then record your own audio. This audio recorder, if you're using Skype, is free, and it was just a bit of software that will start recording your audio locally at the same time as having that conversation on Skype. And finally, most people are using Chrome. Just be aware of where to change your settings on Chrome. Occasionally you can go into something like Google Hangouts and your webcam or your microphone just may not work. And that's probably because the settings in Chrome aren't quite right. So just be aware of where to find that. It's quite tricky, and it just takes a little bit. You've got to click on advanced settings within Chrome to do that. Technique. Practice your technique. So look at your overall video image but also the technique in terms of using your microphone. Now, you don't want to be speaking directly into your microphone. You'll be encouraging more of those plosive noises. You want to be the right distance away from your microphone. So it's about 4 inches away from your microphone, ideally. And you want to have a nice protection against those S's and P's type noises. And in terms of how you speak, be aware of emphasizing the end of your words, but also don't be afraid of silence. Silence is a wonderful thing for podcasters because it helps them edit the podcast episode. If you keep on talking and feel that you have to keep on talking, then you'll probably be using lots of ums and ahs in between sentences to join things up. And if you keep on saying and ah as part of a word that you're saying, it makes it very difficult for a podcaster to edit. So speak slowly, purposefully, and don't be afraid of silence at all. And finally, number 6, promote. So if you're going on a podcast episode, there's probably a good chance that you can drive some of your audience to them, but you can help raise your authority in the eyes of the podcaster by promoting it beforehand. You get people, like Larry Kim, a top digital marketer, promoting all the time, and the level of promotion is absolutely superb. But that's one of the reasons he's perceived as being a top digital marketer, is because he's willing to promote absolutely everything that he's on. Also, in terms of your promotion, email the podcast beforehand to give them your bio and include a couple of links there as well. That's an example of a podcast that I've been on, and that's the bio that I sent them by email, and then they just copied and pasted that and put that straight into the profile. Of course, that turns into a live link in many places as well. So just make life very easy for them to promote you. So there we go, that's the summary. 6 steps to be a great podcast guest: prep, equipment, scene test, technique, and promote. Thank you for your attention. We're going to have a few questions and answers now. I just wanted to say I'm actually going to be launching a guest booking service for marketers on podcasts, because I've been podcasting since 2006. I've got a lot of contacts with podcasters. I've got a lot of contacts with digital marketers. It makes sense to bring them together. So if that interests you, check out GorillaGuests.com. Thank you.